If you enjoy a good night out, you need to know how a simple traffic stop can spiral into a DUI arrest, even if you're sober. The truth is, cops are trained to use your own words against you, and one wrong answer could cost you your license, your money, and even your freedom. I'm Nana Knight. I'm a former prosecutor and a California State Bar board-certified criminal law specialist and a criminal defense attorney. And today, I'm revealing 5 sneaky tactics police use to arrest you for DUI in California and how you can legally protect yourself. Number 1, the casual question trick. We all know that during a traffic stop, police will be asking us questions, but one of the most effective trick questions that cops like to use is the casual question. Where are you coming from? How much have you had to drink tonight? Are you feeling okay? Sounds harmless, right? But these are questions that are actually designed to get you to talk so they can observe your speech, your demeanor, and your responses. And the more you talk, the more evidence you could be handing over to the officer to use against you for a DUI. And while you may be tempted to answer these questions or chat up the officer, remember that the officer is not your friend. The officer is there to investigate you, and that's why he pulled you over and is observing and documenting everything from your driving, your behavior, your reactions, and your statements during this entire interaction to document your impairment. Also, if you start talking, you may get nervous and you may end up volunteering too much information. And the officer may think that you're nervous because you're intoxicated. Just know that the officer will note this observation in their police report. You have a right to refuse to answer their questions. If asked, politely hand over your license, your registration, and proof of insurance. If the officer asks you questions, it's okay to say, "Officer, I'm not comfortable answering questions without an attorney." And you can also ask, "Officer, am I free to go?" The key here is if you want to do this right is in your interactions. Always remain polite and respectful and always comply with the request to hand over your license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. Number 2, the drink question trick. During the DUI stop, the officer will ask you, "Have you had anything to drink tonight?" Sounds simple, right? But no matter how you answer, this question can work against you. If you say yes, even if you've only had one drink hours ago, the officer now has your admission that you actually consumed alcohol. They will probe further. Well, what did you drink? How much did you have? When was your last drink? Every answer helps them build a case against you and also build a timeline. So if you say no, the officer may still suspect you are impaired based on your behavior, odor of alcohol, or your appearance. If you downplay it, saying something like just a beer or a couple of beers or a glass of wine, "I'm totally fine," this may seem innocent, but you've now admitted to consuming alcohol, giving the officer a stronger reason to investigate further and test your blood alcohol concentration. And once you tell the officer how many drinks you've had or when you've had the drink, you're also giving the officer a timeline. The officer may now assume that you were more drunk when you started driving than you are now. So what is the best response? The safest response is, "I'm not comfortable answering any questions without my attorney present." This response is polite, yet firm, and it protects your rights without sounding aggressive. It also prevents you from giving the officer more information than you legally have to. Number 3, the field sobriety test trick. One of the most misunderstood and easiest to fall tricks that the police like to use during a DUI stop is the FST. Even sober people can struggle with these tests, and the officers know it. During the DUI stop, the officer may say something like, "All right, let's just do a quick test here to make sure you're good to go." Or they may say, "This is just to show me you're okay to drive." It sounds simple, right? But here's the truth. FSTs, or field sobriety tests, are voluntary in California. If you're over 21 or older, and if you're not on DUI probation, they're voluntary. The officer may make it sound like these are mandatory, but they're not. The real purpose is to gather evidence against you. Let's look at the 3 main field sobriety tests. These include the standing on one leg test, the follow my finger test, and the walk and turn test, among others. These tests are designed to challenge your coordination, balance, and your focus. But these conditions may not be fair. Even if you haven't had a single drink and you're completely sober, there are plenty of reasons you might fail. You may be nervous. Most people feel anxious during police encounters. The road surface may be uneven. The cracks, the gravel, the slopes can make it hard to balance. Your shoes. If you're wearing heels, boots, or sandals, good luck. Medical conditions such as past surgeries, inner ear issues, vertigo, all mimic signs of impairment. Weather conditions, cold temperatures, wind or rain make things even harder. A perfectly sober person can fail these tests, and failing gives the officer probable cause to investigate you further, potentially leading to your arrest. Now let's look at these tests in more detail. The horizontal gaze nystagmus test is when the officer moves a pen or a finger from side to side while you track it with your eyes. The officer is looking for involuntary eye jerking, but unfortunately, fatigue, anxiety, or medical conditions can cause the same effect. The one-leg stand test. The officer is checking to see if you can listen to instructions and perform simple tasks, and if you're able to stand on one foot for about 30 seconds without losing balance. Even minor wobbles, arm movement, or accidentally lowering your foot can be seen as a sign of intoxication. You can be completely sober with absolutely zero alcohol in your system and still fail this test if you have problems balancing, and many people do. You can also fail this test if you recently had surgery or if you're just plain nervous. A person can fail this balancing test if they're simply overweight, believe it or not. The walk and turn test is another type of FST. This is where the officer is going to ask you to walk a straight line, heel to toe, which means you turn and you walk back while the officer watches you to observe any signs of impairment. If you make any mistakes like stepping off the line or using your arms for balance, or if you miscount the steps or start the test before the officer finishes giving you instructions, guess what? You just failed the walk and turn test. And all these mistakes are counted as clues of impairment, even if you're just nervous. So think carefully before you agree to these FSTs or these tests, because if you don't perform these tests perfectly, the officer will mark you down as impaired. You can protect yourself by refusing to take these tests. You have no legal obligation to perform FSTs. For most people over the age of 21 who are not on DUI probation, that's often the best choice. You can politely say, I would prefer not to do any tests without my attorney present. By knowing your rights, you reduce the chances of giving officers evidence to use against you. And if you're arrested for DUI, your attorney will be able to make a stronger case for you down the line. Number 4, the portable breath test. During a DUI stop and before you are arrested, an officer may casually pull out a handheld breathalyzer and say something like, just blow into it real quick. It's a formality, or the officer could say, let's just check to see if you're good to drive. This sounds harmless, but here's a trick. The handheld breathalyzer is completely optional for most drivers. Yet you may be under the impression that you're required to blow into this device. Let's look into a little more detail on what this device is. A preliminary alcohol screening device, or a PALS, is a portable breath test that checks your blood alcohol concentration, or BAC, on the spot. This is done before an arrest. It is often used to confirm an officer's suspicion that you have been drinking. Now, you have the right to refuse the PAS test. This is a type of FST. It is completely optional, and you're not legally obligated to take this test. But there is a catch. If you're under 21 or on DUI probation, refusing the PAS test could lead to immediate penalties, such as losing your license. Unless these exceptions apply, you're free to refuse this test, and you don't have to explain your reasons for declining either. You always want to remain polite if you decline to take this test. Number 5, the choice confusion. Things change when you're arrested. Under California law, when you get a driver's license and drive on public roads, you have automatically given your implied consent to take a chemical test if you're lawfully arrested for a DUI. In other words, by getting your license, you pre-agreed to take a breath or alcohol test if you are arrested for a DUI. So if you've been arrested, you should comply with a request for a chemical test such as blood or breath test. Otherwise, a refusal penalty may apply and expose you to additional jail time and longer suspension times for your driver's license. When you're asked to take a chemical test, you may be overwhelmed with the options for the chemical test. You may be overwhelmed by the admonishment that the officer administers. The officer may ask you, do you want a breath test or a blood test? The breath test is faster, but the blood test is more accurate. What is your choice? You're likely anxious or confused. If you're unsure, you may make a hasty decision that may hurt your case. You may find that the officer is in a subtle way pushing you toward a test that's easier to use against you. You can ask the officers, which test am I legally required to take? The breath test is the easiest for officers, and you may find that the officer is pushing you towards this test. Officers usually prefer this because it's quicker and it's easier, but the breath tests are often less accurate than blood tests, especially if you have recently consumed alcohol or even mouthwash. Also, breath test machines can misread residual alcohol in your mouth and inflate your results. So you can tell the officer that you prefer the most accurate test available, which often means the blood test. Now, keep in mind that after your arrest and during the chemical test, the officer may continue to ask you questions such as, how much did you drink tonight? Are you feeling buzzed right now? What time was your last drink? The officer may be trying to gather additional evidence to justify your arrest. Even innocent answers can backfire, such as admitting that you had one glass of wine with dinner or a couple of beers. To protect yourself, you should tell the officer, I'm going to remain silent until I can speak with an attorney. Once you've been arrested, you have the right to remain silent, and that's often your best move. And there you have it, 5 tricks police use during DUI stops in California. Remember, keep your mouth closed, politely hand them your driver's license, your registration, and insurance. You don't have to participate in a field sobriety test. You don't have to take the portable breath alcohol screening test, and don't be confused by the options for the chemical test. Remember, be polite, but don't help the officer arrest you if you're not legally required to. At the end of the day, you can legally limit how much the officer has to consider in making his decision to arrest. The fight is not on the road with the officer. The fight will be in court with your attorney. If your loved one is facing a DUI charge in San Jose or the surrounding areas in California, you need answers to defend your freedom and your future. We offer confidential consultations at the number on the screen. If you want to find out how to get your DUI case dismissed even if you blew over the legal limit, check out this next video over here.